During his third and final sentencing hearing today, former USA gymnastics doctor Dr Nassar was sentenced to up to 125 years in prison for sexually abusing young athletes. It comes after Nassar was sentenced to between 40 and 175 years in a separate case. On top of that, Nassar is also facing 60 years in prison for child pornography.
More than 265 victims have come forward since the scandal broke, including Olympic gold medalists. Now, the doctor apologized to his victims before today's sentencing.
The words expressed by everyone that has spoken, including the parents, have impacted me to my innermost core. With that being said, I understand and acknowledge that it pales in comparison to the pain, trauma, and emotions that you all are feeling. It's impossible to convey the depth and breadth of how sorry I am to each and every one involved. The visions of your testimonies will forever be present in my thoughts.
Anam Siddiq has been following this story for CBS News. She was in the courtroom for both of Nassar's hearings this year. Anam, the prosecutor says 265 victims were assaulted by Nassar, with many confronting him in the courtroom. Can you walk us through Nassar's reaction to all of this?
Yeah, so Nassar has been largely throughout both of these trials very sort of emotionless. At the first trial, for the first half of it, he had his hands covering his eyes, and then after that he was looking at each of the victims directly and listening to them. And largely he's been pretty emotionless, not really making any changes to the way he's looking at everybody. But there have been a couple of times that he really has just let some of that emotion loose. It's been with certain minors. You can tell that he has certain connections with them. It's been when some of the survivors have mentioned that they don't plan to forgive him. And it's certainly been when he has known that the cameras are off, when the judge has asked that the victims be anonymous. And that really speaks to the letter that he sent to Judge Aquilina during the last hearing, when he said that, this is a whole media circus. So you can tell that he's very aware of the cameras and the attention that he's getting. And I think that he has composed his face accordingly.
Anam, I didn't know that some of the victims were allowed to, be anonymous with the cameras off when they speak. I mean, that almost gives you even more appreciation for those who felt comfortable coming forward. I mean, the courage it took to stand in court and confront him the way so many of the women did. Look, one of the most dramatic moments was when that father of 3 girls lunged at Nassar in court. You were in the courtroom. I remember you sending an email to everyone saying, hey, this guy had just attacked Nassar. What was it like?
I have to tell you, David, it was very shocking, very emotional for everybody. I think that, when Randall Margraves, I should say, when he lunged at Nassar, I think it was really sort of a climax to, several weeks worth of parents' testimony alongside their daughters, where you could really tell that these parents were so severely affected. These women, these survivors who've been speaking, they are very strong in their own right, but I've been actually watching the parents, and especially the fathers, the look in their eyes. You can actually see the fire in their eyes as they look at the man who, their daughters say sexually assaulted them. And I think that when Randall Margraves finally, reacted in an actual physical way, there were a lot of parents who were kind of applauding him, and a lot of survivors who told me that they were surprised that this didn't happen sooner.
I can understand that. There were so many emotional speeches throughout both trials. Can you tell us a little bit about the relationship among the victims that spoke in court? Did you see them encourage one another, really reach out to each other?
It's funny because a lot of these women, as they were speaking, they were mentioning that for so many years they felt that they were all alone. And As I mentioned earlier, and David, you were mentioning this too, there were several women who had wished to remain anonymous, and they had originally planned to make anonymous statements or have their statements anonymously read. And there are so many women who ended up switching over and saying, you know what, we want to be public, we want our names to be out there, we think that's going to help with the healing process. And that, I think, has a lot to do with listening to other survivors' statements. I mean, I heard that Allie Raceman actually decided to speak after she heard Kyle Stevens' statement. She was the first person to speak at the last hearing. And I've seen a lot of these women, their relationships have blossomed with each other in such a peculiar and strong way. They refer to themselves as the army of sister survivors. And, Larissa Boyce, who's been kind of one of the sort of de facto leaders of this group of survivors, was just telling me today that, these women have started a text group with each other. They keep checking in with each other, supporting each other, figuring out next steps. And in fact, they are planning on setting up a vacation for all of them, that they'll all, like a getaway, a weekend getaway, starting this year. And they plan to do that for every year coming up.
Anam, it's been chilling to listen to these young women speak. It really has. Thank you for your reporting.